Hvala. Dobar dan svima, dobro jutro ili dobar dan. S obzirom da me neki od vas poznaju pre svega kao predstavnika upravljača, najvećeg upravljača u Vojvodini, danas ipak nisam u toj funkciji ovdje, nego kao neko ko je i u nauci, pa ću kroz neko kraće istraživanje koje je sprovedeno početkom ove godine predstaviti rezultate, ali uz dužno poštovanje prema kolegama koje su došli iz inostranstva, odnosno kolege koji su predstavnici Danube Parks asocijacije. Moja prezentacija će zbog domaćih gostiju biti na lokalnom jeziku, a ja ću ipak pričati na engleskom. I will speak in English due to the respect of the colleagues from the Danube Parks Association. I am very happy that after a while we managed to meet each other in person, so I very appreciate some familiar faces from the network. I will not speak as a member of the organization who is the member of the Danube Park Association from the aspect of Vojvodina Šume, but I will speak today as someone who is also start the, let's say, scientific journey in this sense, and the research that has been conducted within my PhD study. I would like to show you some of the starting results of one short research regarding the management of protected area in the climate change in the context of the stakeholder attitudes of different institutions and organizations. And this presentation is more related to the systematic overview rather than the operative level of the management. Just a very brief about the management system of protected area in Serbia. We have almost 8% of the national territory under some type of protection or protection regimes and different categories of protected area. More than 417 protected areas, 5 national parks, and another categories of protected area in the category of special nature reserve, nature parks, landscape area, protected habitats, monuments of nature, and single protected species. Our framework in general of the system is shaped by the legislation and the institutional framework, supporting by the financial framework as well. From the aspect of the legislation, the system is shaped with the two main laws, law on nature conservation and the law on national parks, and as you can see, the many of the numerous sub-laws, let's say, of these main laws. In the context of the institutions, some short graphs showing some key institutions involved in the system on the different levels, starting from the public administration, which is mainly, let's say, managed by the Ministry of Environment and Protection, and on the provincial level on the territory of Vojvodina, also the Secretariat for Environmental Protection. On the level of public service, we have the two Institutes for Nature Conservation, one which is related to the Vojvodina province, and another one situated in Belgrade, which operates the other part of Serbia. When we speak about management of protected areas, then we are coming on the level of different public enterprises, different institutions, and other legal entities who are managing these protected areas. With the different available funds, we also provide this financial aspect of the management. One of the key and most important sectors is scientific research, which are mainly representative with the faculties in the institutes, also from the public, but in the recent period we also have the new one who are arising from the private sector. And the someone without we could not manage in many aspects are the civil society sectors, represented by the different NGOs or the associations. We did in this research, at least we tried to see what are the attitudes of some of the representatives of the institutions and the organization regarding the management of protected area and the climate change. And in this context, let's say that we try to reach most important one, let's say, from each of these level of organization, from the ministry and the Institute for Nature Conservation, different scientific research institutions, also the managers of protected area, and these, let's say, 7-8 public enterprises that are mentioned here are, let's say, representing 95% of protected areas in Serbia. And also the attitude of different civil society organizations was also taken into account, and we ask some of them who are very active on the national level. So research was conducted in the sense of the direct interviews with the representatives of the institutions and organization, with some 17 questions of the open type. Since the research was conducted in the period when Corona was very intensive, some of them were very direct, but some of them were done in online way. We have 20 respondents, 2 institutions. When I say institutions, this means that those are the ministries and institution representing the government, and 18 organizations. Some questions that I want to show you results today are related, are shown in this slide. And we ask the respondents if they think that the climate change impact on protected area in their management, if they have any experience with the negative consequences of the climate change, if they think that the climate change will influence on protected area in the future. We ask them, if possible, to state or to recognize some measures and activities which can be say that they are important for the management of protected area and the climate change, which are stated in the strategy and in the laws that are relevant for this sector. And we ask them if there is a need for improving of the regulative and institutional framework. In this sense, we'd kindly ask to give the exact proposal how this can be improved. We ask to assess the cooperation of the different stakeholders in the general system on the regarding to the management of protected area in this period, and we ask at the end what are the needs on one side and what are the limitations on the another side of the institutions and organization in order to deal better with the question which arise. And I think that many of us who are operative dealing with protected area are facing every day. So some of the answers on this question are also here. So when we ask if climate change impact on protected area, majority of the responses give the positive answers, yes, climate change influence. We're trying to make differentiation on what kind of impact it is. And some three type of the impacts raised that the respondents recognize the changing on the habitats, on the ecosystem, on the species, which is mainly, even in the visual way, very evident that the drying of the forests, of the presence of the landslides or the big calamities of the insects are stated as the most relevant. The windbrows, the snowbrows that are showing not every year, but almost every year was also stated. Another category which is stated is the change in the processes, in the natural processes. Now, some of the, let's say, the most visible aspects is there is a very different water regime of the surface water, but also of the underground water, and the dynamic of the floods, which is very have big influence, especially on the protected area, which are in the category of the Ramsar site, like the colleague Ms. Kappa mentioned at the beginning, the variety and the number of the Ramsar site in Croatia. This is the same situation that you have. We as a company, we have, actually Vojvodina Šume also have in Vojvodina 4 big protected area in the category of the Ramsar sites, and these are the consequences which are most visible, at least in these sites. And there is the changing in the biological characteristics of the species and the animal and the plant species. For some of them, there is changing in the phenological phases. For instance, the bigger duration of the vegetation period, which can cause also the changing in the biological characteristic, also the changing of the areal of some of the species, and also one of the maybe most visible change is the changing the nesting of the birds. When we speak about negative experience, beside this, let's say, ecological impact that the climate change has, many of the respondents also recognize economical impact, especially in the protected area, where the management of the resources is allowed. Also, this is the case in the national parks, in the protected area where you have the big surface under the forests. So, beside these ecological, more or less, I already mentioned in the previous slide, these economical consequences are related to the bigger costs or the higher costs for the sanation, the decreased income. And there is, due to these quite intensive windbreaks, snow breaks, there is the bigger quantum of the wood mass that needs to be put on the market. And also, one of the important aspects that the local inhabitants also feel the consequences of the climate change. One of the, for me, surprising impact, which is recognized not as ecological and economical, is the social one, which means that the people who are working in the protected area or are related to them really suffer or have this personal impact of climate changes. For instance, some of the colleagues who are working in some protected area on the north part of Vojvodina, in Palić Lake or the Ludaš Lake, they said that they have the personal emotion that those are the rangers who were playing in some of the swamps or some depressions with the water maybe 40 years ago, and now these actually habitats they don't have anymore in the protected area. This is some personal that they are seeing these changes, let's say, every day. Also, these social aspects is visible, not maybe so in Vojvodina, but in the rest part of Serbia, in destroyed the property of the people living in protected area. We in 2014 have big floods which occurred on the territory of the whole country, and in some of the protected area, National Park Tara, some of the landslides have been shown and was present, and the people lost the whole their or part of their property. So from all these aspects, consequences are very visible. Maybe we recognize at the moment some of them better than the others, but evidently that are very present. On the question, do you think that in the future period the climate change would impact on the system of protected area management? Majority of the respondents have the positive aspect, but they were not very sure on the how this climate change would really be intensive in the future period. And for me, it was very surprising with speaking with one of the colleagues from the Institute for Nature Conservation that he is not sure that the climate change are the present, because there is no enough long period for monitoring that we can say that, at least that he can say that we are speaking about climate change in this sense. So they mention, all respondents mentioned that the impacts of the climate change would be in the context of the additional financing, that the improving of the staff and the technical capacity of the manager of protected area is needed. Improving of the regulatory framework is also necessary, as well as the institutional framework. And I think that Ms. Kappa also mentioned that they also miss some of the staff or maybe operative dealing in the protected area, in the management of the protected area. Changing of the management way of the protected area is also one of the attitudes that we need to think in the future. Georg already mentioned some new ideas, some new projects, some new initiatives that needs to be that can be appear in the next period. In related to the question, can you state some of the measures and the activities which are present in the strategy and the law, which are relevant for the management of protected area and the climate change? It was very surprisingly that respondents couldn't, on the first hand, say what are the measures, activities that we are doing that we can say that they contribute to the climate change. And let's say the first choice was always increasing of the surface under the protected area and increasing of the territory of the ecological network. Improving of the active measure of protections, let's say, or their implementation, like the revitalization, like the mowing, like the removing of the invasive species, like cattle grazing was, let's say, most evident examples of these measures. Protection of the single species and the habitats was also stated. Scientific monitoring, not only the just pure or simple following the status of some species and habitats, but pure monitoring, scientific monitoring is defined as one of them. And providing the landscape diversity or mosaic is also stated as an example. Asking what could be improved in the regulatory framework, some of the proposal was very concrete, and from the aspect of the strategy on biodiversity, national strategy, it is stressed that the role of protected area as a tool, let's say, for the adaptation and mitigation measures for climate change is not defined at the moment as it should be. So we don't recognize these areas as something that contribute to the let's say fight against the climate change. Since that we are living on let's say the Balkan, many of the responses says, yes, I will do something, but I don't have the guidelines in this context. Yeah, so some of the managers ask or propose that some definition of the recommendation of the guidelines would be very useful for them. Also, we are not aware of the risk and that the protected area are imposed to the climate change, and this is something which is also already stated that it needs to be improved. For taking into account that we have more and more protected areas, there is evident need for revision of the previous background study for their designation. So for some of the protected areas that we have, some of the basic studies are older than 30 years. So some active revision, which is done by the Institute of Nature Conservation in Belgrade or Novi Sad, needs to be emphasized. Providing the financing for the measures and activities is, of course, one of the most important, and there is the need for harmonization with the different sectors. In the legislation framework, maybe one of the most important is stated that there is a need to some flexibility in the regimes of the protections, that the active measures of protections need to be obligatory for the managers, and at the moment we have, let's say, some protected areas, some number of protected areas which are more on the paper rather that the managers are doing something in the field. Changing of the relevant documentation, there is a need to change general principles of nature protection in the law. Improving of the protection of the species and the habitats, and there is also a need, which is more some administrative one, to revise the obligation among the manager and the protected area users. We ask also respondents, if possible, to recognize what is needed to improve in the institutional framework. One of the essential proposal is to speed up the procedure for decision making, to link the institutions. At the moment, these links are missing, especially on the level of the local community and protected area, especially on the level of the protected area and the scientific research organization. There is also need to connect all of them, and one of the surprising was that the ministry was recognized as an institution that needs to work more. Many of the protected area managers recognize the Ministry of Environmental Protection only through two things. One is the subsidies, and the second one is official giving the opinion on or approving the planning documentation. In sense of the cooperation, more or less, including or harmonizing the interest of all different stakeholders are necessary. There is also need to connect financing, different financing, for instance, of non-governmental organization by the ministry and the needs of the protected area. Many of the NGOs perform some activities or projects in the protected area which are not in the line or harmonized with the needs of protected areas. And including the general public or the citizens or the people who are working in or around protected area, and the management is also very important. This is the last slide. Some needs and limitations was asked to be defined. As you can see, there is a matching of the limitations from one side and the needs on the another side. But what is very interesting, there is something which is shown as a necessity, that the decision maker are not recognize this topic as very important, and also that there is also the need to provide additional information on the impact of the climate change on protected area. Thank you very much.